In March 2020, a strange thing happened to the marketing messages of millions of companies worldwide, including some of the biggest and most successful organisations on the planet. They stopped working. Almost overnight, messages that had worked successfully for months and even years suddenly didn't land anymore, and companies of all sizes found themselves paralysed and unable to reach their customers. Revenues fell accordingly. Why was this? Why did the coronavirus crisis impact the activity of businesses of all shapes and sizes in this way, and what can we do about it? To explain, we have to go back to 1943 and a brilliant young psychologist named Abraham Maslow. In 1943, Maslow published a paper in which he first identified what he called the hierarchy of human needs. He identified that human needs come in a series of layers, starting at the bottom with the essential needs of survival, such as air to breathe, food to eat, and water to drink, and moving up through a feeling of security, and then a feeling of what he called belongingness, being part of a group, and then a feeling of having some esteem and recognition by your peers. Finally, at the top, Maslow identified something he called self-actualization, a feeling where everything is going your way, you have no fear of the future, everything is positive, and you are living your best life. Maslow also identified that disruptions lower in the hierarchy trump anything that's happening higher in the hierarchy. So a disruption to our feeling of safety or security will mean that we are suddenly less interested in anything higher up the hierarchy. In a moment of disruption, self-actualization and forward movement become less important, or even irrelevant. This explains what happened in March of this year. For many people in professional, technical, managerial or entrepreneurial roles, life is often spent in the higher parts of the Maslow hierarchy. Life is interesting. Life is an adventure. What happened in March of 2020 was that everybody was pulled back down to the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy as the threat of coronavirus materialised. The threat to our health, the severity of which was unclear, the threat to our incomes as businesses locked down, and the empty shelves in food stores all contributed to a rapid movement of many people down the Maslow hierarchy. Now let's look at the anatomy of a business communication. A business communication between two individuals has two essential elements: content and context. The content is what's said in the message and to some extent how it's said, whether it's an email, a phone call, a video or any other method. The context of the communication is the circumstances in which the communication is sent and more particularly received. When, where, at what point in a process, etc. The key thing about content and context is that for a business communication to be effective, both content and context have to be right. If only one of them is right, we get a communication which may be irrelevant or embarrassing. If both content and context are wrong, the message is almost certainly embarrassing and irrelevant, and it may even be annoying. So for business communications to work, both content and context have to be right. This explains what happened to those successful marketing messages in March 2020. They were designed for a world in which people were at the top of Maslow's hierarchy, and they'd been carefully tuned and crafted over time to work in that context. But coronavirus changed the context for everybody, so those same communications became irrelevant and they stopped working. To find out what happened since March, where we are now with our business communications and what we need to do this summer, join me, Jonathan Wagstaff, in a free webinar hosted by the world famous Bettany Centre at Cranfield University on the 4th of June at 3:30 p.m. British Summer Time. We'll talk about what happened in March, what's happened since, and what you need to do about it to make sure your business continues to communicate effectively throughout the summer.